Welcome to another episode of the Thunderstock Show. I'm your host, Ross Stockdale, Thunderstock Marketing. We're here to bring you another valuable brainstorm to enhance your life, liberty, and pursuit of property. Today's guest is action-packed with excellent stories and perspectives, not just on entrepreneurship, but on living a good life. Josh Kosnick. Josh has exited 3 companies. He bought 80 acres. He hosts leadership retreats and events. He has a coaching practice. He's an EOS implementer. And last but certainly not least, he's the host of Spartan Leadership Podcast. Josh, how's it going out there in the Heartlands?
It's going great. Thanks for having me. It's been a rainstorm today, so I'm not recording with you from my podcast studio, but rather at home this morning because we had an internet outage. But we're making do and here and excited to be with you and all your listeners.
Totally stoked to have you on, Josh. Been looking forward to this one for sure. Adapt and overcome. That's what we
That's
got to
right.
do. Issues aren't problems. They're just things to overcome to get to our goal. A little EOS teaser. So first question I have for you, Josh, is we talked offline and everyone that's watching can see that you've got some sports memorabilia. Tell me a little bit about how you grew up being an athlete. What sports did you play? How did that shape your formative years?
Yeah, so unlike the athletes or young athletes nowadays, I did everything. It seems nowadays kids are choosing a sport and AAU ball and all the other club sports are making them kind of choose one and just do that their whole time. I grew up playing soccer. I was on a travel club team and did really well in that. And come eighth grade, when I moved up to Madison, in the fall, you got to choose soccer or football. I fell in love with football and chose that. But I did all the things, man. Tennis, swimming, uh, and baseball, any sport I could pick up and play and have fun. Growing up as an undiagnosed ADD child, I sports was the one thing I could focus on. School wasn't. So I didn't get diagnosed till I was 25 years old when I started studying for investment exams. And so it was one of those things where, parents, teachers, you're so bright. Why don't you focus on this? I was like, I don't know. I don't know. Just bored me. So anyhow, the sports led me into playing some college football. And it was just one of those things. I credit all my soccer time with my fundamentals as a wide receiver and the footwork that was created through soccer. So having those different sports play into it and being competitive growing up, not wanting to lose at anything, and continue to use those skills in college, and then took that into my career, being competitive and continuing to utilize that fire to compete in the entrepreneurial world.
As somebody that was also diagnosed with ADHD, I was just diagnosed at an early age. I guess my parents described me as the poster child for the DXM or whatever when they looked at the handbook. I could totally relate. And the way I would explain my perspective on it is if I was interested, I was the most interested person you've ever met. And if I wasn't, you couldn't force me to want to care. So, yes,
100%.
binary attention span, superpower when you get to do the things you love to do. For me as well, sports. Now, you did play collegiate sports, and when you went to school, what did you have in mind for career, or were you like me, which was where am I going to have the best balance between what I want to do athletically and I guess school will happen and it'll be fine as well. That's how I looked at it. Is that how you approached it as well?
I literally had no idea. Business was a vague idea. I know I wanted to do something business oriented. So I was a general business major to begin with. But honestly, I went to school or went to college to continue playing football. That was my sole motivator. And so I actually, as soon as I played 2 years of football, and as soon as I stopped, I pretty much checked out of college as well. And probably another semester, actually 2 semesters, because I picked up, after I stopped playing football, I got recruited to play club lacrosse and never had picked up a lacrosse stick in my life.
Holy
Ended up
crap.
ended up starting right away, not because we were bad, just I used my athleticism and my love of hitting people and getting hit, evidently, to pick that sport up pretty quickly. So I played 2 semesters of that and then checked out of school and started on with business and life.
Yeah, there's something about simulated combat. I would say, I never joined the military. I have the utmost respect for those that did, but a lot of my friends that, totally outside of business are either active or retired military. And it seems like when we're just hanging out, being guys, we have that thing in common where you can't compare real life, in their terms, civilian life, and my term, your terms, like on the field or in the ring, with anything else. And you kind of chase those experiences of, if you're not paying attention fully, you're screwed. And I try to put myself in those types of positions as much as possible.
I was playing in a kickball tournament last summer for charity, and I had to ask the organizer of our team, I said, "Hey, are we trying to win or is this just to have fun? Because I need to know what mindset I'm in. Because if we're trying to win and I turn on my competitive trigger, I can't turn it off." So I needed to
Mm-hmm.
know what mindset I needed to be in for a charity kickball tournament.
I mean, some people might think, why the hell are you asking me this? But I totally get it. You want to match, you want to read the room.
Yep.
So fast forward a little bit, you graduated. We talked a little bit about your diverse background, and you did made some exits. It seems like one of the first businesses, if not the first one you were into, was a fitness company. How'd you get into it?
Actually, the first one I started as a financial advisor, owning a book, and that was at age 24. And my father was in that industry. I tried to stay away from him. We're too much alike. And I got told no for a raise at Best Buy when I was a sales manager, and that ended my corporate career. I was always taught if you do better, you get more. And I was running a top five store in the country, and I knew others making more than me just because they were older than me, and they told me no. And so I ended up calling my father shortly after being declined for a raise and said, "Hey, I want to do that," because I had always seen the lifestyle that it could provide, and also that I was in control of my income and what I was quote unquote worth. So at age 24, I joined a financial firm as an independent advisor and started building that. The Anytime Fitness came about as my wife was thinking about going to law school and took her LSATs and all that. And she'd always been into fitness. And we together as a family decided that law school wasn't going to be the play. And we found an opportunity to own a franchise with the Anytime Fitness model. She ran that. I ran the financials kind of business end of it while I was building my financial firm. And that's how that played out. When we got pregnant with our second child, we decided to sell that, make a profit, and she was raising the family, and I continued to grow my financial firm or practice, which ended up turning into a firm in my mid 30s. So I ended up selling my practice when I was 35 and was appointed one of the youngest managing partners in the country at 35, and was running a firm with what grew to be, before I sold that, 115 advisors, 250 team members, and we're managing about $4 billion under management. That's the short story.
Well, one thing interesting about that story is I love the decision making around you're about to have your second child. Your ego is not attached to any single business, right? It's like, if this no longer serves the purpose, then let's pivot into something else. I think oftentimes people, when they do exits, hold on too long, and they might replace that void, or that maybe struggling family life, and they use business as an escape. We're like, no, this business is going to be something that supports my family life. So I think that's admirable. And anyone listening, keep that in mind when you're making decisions. I implore you to do so. Man, that really does show your competitive nature, though, because when you're telling the story of seeing what your father was doing and getting that example of, really, the American dream is you get to live the life that you create, the manifest destiny thing, and you bet on yourself and you're competitive. I had a father that also was in commercial real estate, so not the same, but similar business model. And he told me, get a job before I hire you. And then same thing, I got told no to a raise because my age didn't matter. Performance was there, numbers were there. And like you, I stepped out of corporate America at that time and didn't look back. Can
That's
definitely
great.
relate.
Yeah, going back to your point about the ego, is I see a lot. Look, all entrepreneurs in whatever business that you're going to be in or that are currently in, that's your baby. So I totally get that. It is your baby. It's like a child. You grew it from nothing, from the ground up. I've been there and done that. The point is, though, that there has to be some sort of transition, because at some point it's going to end, whether you die, whether you become disabled, whether you get a big check or someone shows up at your door and wants to buy you out, whatever it may be, or you transition it to the next generation or to key employees. There's going to be an end date. So it's, what are you growing for? And how does that resonate with how else you want to live your life? And for me, family is really important. We have 4 young kids at this point, and now we're done. But we have 4 kids, and that family balance that everyone's looking for can be attained, but I don't call it work life balance, because work life balance indicates a 50-50. When you use the word balance, you're thinking of 50-50. And
Like
that's just never,
scales.
yeah, scales. It's never going to be the case. So what you got to work towards is work life integration, work life harmony. That those are 2 things that can be achieved. Balance cannot, because if you're starting a new initiative or you're starting a new company, there's going to be no balance. You're going to
Mm.
be all in, and you got to go balls to the wall to make that thing work. And especially if you have employees that are counting on you and a family that's counting on you. So there's going to be no balance there. But even if you're just a 9 to 5 person, okay, let's talk about balance. You work 8-ish hours a day. Your kids are in school 8-ish hours a day, and you got to sleep 8-ish hours a day. That's not a 50-50 thing, even
Yeah.
if you're a 9 to 5 person. So it's, how do we integrate our days and our lives so that we can show up and be the best at work and at home?
Yeah. You said it succinctly and impactfully. It's a myth. I think the same thing pertains to relationships with family as well. They say, oh, marriage is 50-50. I think it's 100%, 100%.
Yes,
Because if both people aren't committed to the mission of this family, and some people's 100% looks different on each day, but you kind of rely on your spouse as much as you rely on a business partner, where you both have to do your absolute best to make it work. And I think the idea that good things will happen if you just have good vibes. I want to dispel that myth, because sure, having confidence and having belief and positive mindset absolutely matters. But if you don't map your actions to the goals you have, a goal without a plan is simply a wish. You got to put in the work.
that's right. Actually, Brene Brown, I heard her speak once, and she talked about a system she set up with her husband. And let's say, and I may get this slightly wrong, but everyone will get the point. They checked in with each other when they got home. And let's say she had just a brutal day, and they would give each other their percentage and say, like, hey, I had a brutal day. I only got 20%. And then she'd ask, what does he have? And if he had 40% or 50 or 60 or 80, okay, he can step up that night a little bit better than she can to own some of the home tasks and the family tasks. Oh, I thought about that. I was like, man, what a brilliant way to not only check in with your spouse and understand where they're at and what they're doing, and what energy they can dispel that night. And also then focus on the kids, like who's going to have the most focus based on their energy level.
Do you have any systems or heuristics in play for living the integrated life with your family unit while you're building all these businesses? Like, I'm curious.
Yeah, I'll give you a tactical one right now, but there's a long story that, well, I can shorten it up. There's a long story that goes into how I built my systems, but just one. So you mentioned that I bought those 80 acres. I don't live there, even though there's a house there, because we're running events and retreats and people stay at the house. So I didn't want to move 4 kids in and out. So I have about a 25-minute drive. Madison's built on 3 large lakes, and there's no bridges across them. And so I live on the northwest side of town, and the farm's on the south side. So it takes about 25 minutes. My system is that in between going, having a long day of building businesses to going home, I get a workout in. And so
Mm.
I'm recharging my battery. So I always ruck in the morning, and that's my steady state cardio. And then I get a lift in late afternoon, early evening on my way home. And therefore, I can reset my mind, reset my body and my energy, and go home and be the best dad I can be, best husband I can be on my way home. And so, but even if I didn't work out, which is rare, but there's some days that just stuff gets in the way and I got a busy evening, I got 25 minutes to do whatever I need to do to reset my mind, to go home and be the best dad and husband I can possibly be, because that's our most important job as we have a family. But the longer story I'll give you this is, when I sold the firm, that was almost 4 years ago. That was 2021. It wasn't a happy sale. I got forced out. And long story short, I had an employee turn on me, that I recruited, I mentored, I taught everything I know. And there's some things that happened, and he chose to sue me. and not rightfully so. It was slander, it was defamation, and I found out a lot about legal that you can't countersue unless it's outside the bounds of what they're suing you for. And even though it was all lies. So I find out a lot about the legal system and its inadequacies, to say the least. That being said, the company turned on me to get themselves out of the lawsuit. And so they terminated me 2 months after I was served with papers from him. But they had to buy me out. So it wasn't a happy sale, although, so I went through just this deep state of grief, deep state of loss, purpose gone, what I thought I was going to do for the next 20 years and build this firm as big as possible and sell when I was 56 didn't come to fruition. You want to make God laugh? Tell him your plans. That held true.
I love that quote.
And so I speak nationally now, and I'm privileged to do so. And I often will tell the crowd that's there for me that day is, sometimes the worst things that happen to us are the best things that happen for us. And what that allowed me to do, not only during that grief, but was there was a 6-month period where we were negotiating the exit. I didn't think it was going to take that long, but as soon as attorneys get involved, things drag out. So I had to process that grief, but in the same point, in going through the stages of grief, I was able to envision the future. And what I
Right.
realized in some of my lessons, and this will resonate with a lot of people and where I wanted to get to, is we're told or asked from our youth, what do you want to be when you grow up? You asked me at the beginning of the show, what did I want to go to college for, potentially for a career? Like, we're conditioned from a very early age to focus on the what and not the who.
Interesting.
We never ask our kids, who do you want to be when you grow up? And why do you want to do that? And I've been guilty of this as well. So I'm not saying I'm immune to this, but what I've learned is it's far more important to be the who, like, who do you want to be? What character do you want to have? Than the what profession do you want to have? Because, like, as a kid, you may have said, I want to be a firefighter. I want to be in the NFL. I want to be a doctor, whatever that may be. But we're focusing on the what, the position. And that's not at all bad. But what we lack there is the true purpose of life. And the true purpose of life is to find out why we're here, what gifts did God give us, so that we can give those back to the world. So I created this 5 bridge methodology. My farm is called 5 Bridges. My book that's going to come out this year, in all likelihood, that will be the title. It's still in editing mode, so we'll figure that out. But the first bridge we got to cross is our spiritual bridge. Now, everyone may not believe what I believe. I'm a Christian, so I always caveat this, but here's what I know. We've all been to a funeral. We've all been to a wake where we can see the body and the spirit is gone. So whether you believe what I believe or not, you know that we're spiritual beings. We can all agree on that. And so we got to figure out and be right with our spirit first and cross that bridge. So again, if you believe in God like I do, great. If you don't, you got to figure out what your spiritual purpose is. The second bridge we got to cross is what I call internal. But it's mental, it's physical, it's emotional. Because just like anytime we sit down on an airplane, the flight attendants will say, put your oxygen mask on in case of emergency first before assisting others. Because if we're not right with ourselves mentally, physically, and emotionally, we can't show up to be the best for others. So we got to cross that bridge and be the very best version of ourselves, mentally, emotionally, physically, so that we can give back to the world in the proper manner, so that we can give back to our family, so we can give back to our employees, whatever it may be. Third bridge is relationships. Relationships are the fruit of life. When I lost everything, or what I thought was everything, the one thing I didn't lose was my family, thankfully. And I could have screwed that up too, because what we focus on is bridge 4, which is our profession, or what I call our environment, our professional, financial. We focus on that. We get engaged to our careers. We get married to our businesses, and we lose focus of what matters most: our family, our spirit, our mental and emotional health. How often have we sacrificed our mental and emotional health, mental, emotional, physical? I got to put physical in there, at the altar of, I got to get this project done. I just got to work a little harder. I got this deadline to meet. And we put that on the altar and we forget that. And soon enough, I coach really high-end entrepreneurs. Soon enough, they got estranged relationships with their kids. They're on their third marriage. They're morbidly obese. They're on statins or cholesterol stuff, heart medicine, whatever it may be, because they've let their physical health go. They let their mental health go. They've sacrificed it on the altar of doing more, being more in their career, earning more money, whatever it may be. But if we cross those 4 bridges right, we get to the 5th bridge, which is leaving an amazing legacy. Legacy is the 5th bridge. And it's not what you leave behind, it's what you leave in others. So legacy does, yes, legacy can be tangible, but I have things from my father-in-law who passed unfortunately in 2018, and those are tokens to remember him by. But what I remember is what he left in me and the lessons that he taught me. Legacy is far more than the things that you leave behind. It's more of what you leave in others and the impact that you left on this world.
Who, not what. I think with modern masculinity, and as someone who's coached sports, jiu-jitsu, and who I wanted to be when I went to school was I knew I wanted to be at some function a coach, right? To help other young men the way that I had coaches and father figures in my life help me to become who I was at the time. And I thought the thesis was wrestling coach. In order to be a coach, you should be a teacher. Halfway through school, realized being a teacher was for the birds. This is the antithesis of what I want to do professionally. But the spirit still remains. And I think that there's a void in the market for men that are, I would say, 12, 13, starting in adolescence, up to even mid 20s, where there's not strong signals of male role models in society. Not to make a value judgment on some of these, but Andrew Tate being one of them, oftentimes.
Well, you can make a value judgment on that person.
But oftentimes gets construed as materialism and chasing external validation points and just get as many women and as much money as possible. But it sort of lacks that spiritual void that you talked about where, we're put on earth. What makes us different than animals? I think the spirit being one of them, a key factor. But is how you see the legacy that you want to build with the work that you do is helping to fill that market need of positive male role models?
Yeah, it's a big focus of mine. It wasn't when I started my coaching practice necessarily. I was focused on leadership and building great cultures and stuff of that nature. And then what I found is people were finding me in their brokenness because I had gotten through my brokenness. And it does start with the spirit, but there's a whole lot of mental trash, head trash, we call it, letting our physicality go, being what a man's supposed to be. But at the end of the day, we are built for way more than what we do for a living. We were built for way more than what our bank account says. Now, I'm saying this as a millionaire, like multimillionaire. Like
Sure.
I'm still very competitive and still want to make more money and still have an impact on the world through doing so. So I
Right.
don't want people to sit here and take my message like you can't go make a lot of money. No, go make a lot of money, but it's not about that.
But it goes back to the scales. It goes back to, instead of thinking of life in a balance, when you think of it integration, you can have it all. You can make the impact, you can have the legacy, you can have the relationships, you can have the freedom of doing what you want to do to make your mark in the world and still make money. There's nothing wrong with that. I still think the United States is the greatest country that's ever existed. And one of the main reasons is because there's the opportunity of upward mobility that still exists for those that'll take that opportunity.
Yep, 100%.
So let me ask you some questions around the exit point in that the brokenness. When did EOS come in your life? Was it before or after your exit? Is that part of the way you scaled your firm?
Yeah, it was. So a little bit. I would say, I'll put it this way. So it entered my life in 2018 when my top advisor, who runs a very large practice, handed me the book Traction and said, "Hey, Josh, I think you should read this. This will be great for you to start doing something with the firm." Read that, loved it. Then read Rocket Fuel, loved it. Going back to the ADD thing, I was too ADD to read the back of the book that told me that I could hire an implementer to help us implement EOS in our firm. So stupid me, silly me, whatever. I start trying to do it on my own. I sit there at my leadership table and I look around it and I have this epiphany that I got a bunch of great leaders, but they all think like me. They're all visionary. And so no wonder that we talk about 67 great ideas and nothing gets done. And so I went to find an integrator, someone that thinks more left brain, more solution focused, more stay on task, not go over here on these shiny objects, like we were
The
typically doing.
OCD antithesis to the ADD.
That's correct. So I find it took me 6 months to find the exact right person. She's the only person I brought with me from my firm because I needed her to build this new venture, but brought her in. So once I got into coaching, post the sale of the firm, again, thinking I'm just going to focus on leadership, culture building, recruiting, it kept popping up that more and more entrepreneurs needed systems and processes. So all what I found is all entrepreneurs have two problems. One is human development or leadership, and the second is systems and processes to help them scale and grow. So, all right, if that second problem, well, issue, right? So those two issues, then there's like 136 minor issues that fall under those two issues. If those are the two main ones, I'm really skilled on the leadership human development side, and I'm decent at systems and processes because of my experience of growing businesses and then also trying to implement EOS on my own. So I was like, all right, let's go get fully trained on this so I can actually be of service on these companies that are and leaders that are reaching out to me. So once I get trained, I'm like, man, I may have gotten 20% of that right. And that's
Wow.
probably being generous. Like, but being a facilitator and a participant is extremely hard to do. And
Right.
so, and especially in a established organization, large leadership team, it's just really, it's not impossible, but it's really hard to do.
Right.
So I looked at it, I'm like, man, I did not get most of that right. And so now the job is, so when I do a discovery call with a potential client is I'm asking a lot of questions. What's the biggest bugaboo? Is it human development or is it systems and processes? And that'll determine which path we go.
And man, that's such a introduction to EOS. So you read the book from one of your colleagues and then you self-implemented because you're just not aware that implementers were a thing at the time.
Yeah. I would have gladly stroked that check. Just didn't know.
Well, that's one of the reasons that I love doing these podcasts with people that are also EOS implementers, to let the market know that you guys are out there, because it was transformative in my career as well. Interesting. So what does your split look like with all of your, as someone that thinks that ADHD is a superpower for entrepreneurship because it enables you to have the mental flexibility to juggle simultaneously engaging projects at once, what is on your plate today, Josh? Like, what are the ventures you're doing now? Like, all of them high level, and how do you allocate your energy and time and attention into them to keep growing them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I do have a lot on my plate, but it's all vertically integrated under building better humans. So I want everyone to be their best and show up their best. And so whatever that means, so I do individual coaching one-on-one with leaders or entrepreneurs, and that's where they want more personal attention from me, dedicated one-on-one. The EOS implementation, I only take on about half as many clients each year as normal implementers because of all of what I've got going on. So people will ask me that, do you have space? Right now, I think I have space for 2 new EOS clients. So I only take on about a half as much because of what else I have going on. Obviously, you mentioned the podcast. And then I run retreats out at my land where I can spend concerted times with a small group of people where we can dive in on those 5 bridges. Like, if you come visit me in my land, it's highly likely you're going to end up doing a really hard workout with me, and you're going to end up in my natural cold plunge. And we're going to work on your mental game. We're going to work on your physical game, and we're going to obviously get better professionally. So there's a lot, and I speak depending on the season, on some big stages, small stages across the country. And then I'm writing a book right now. Well, it's in the editing phase, so I'm finishing a book right now that'll hopefully be released in August. But it's all about what we've talked about so far and helping people uncover that work-life integration and really get to their unlived life.
But I love how you tie it back to a vertical integration. It's super important to do. When I talk to entrepreneurs and people say they have 5 businesses, and one might be a marketing agency, and one might be a coaching business, and one might be a warehouse, like a 3PL, and another one might be an e-commerce store, another one might be something completely other random.
Mhm.
If there's not a vertical integration, even the most mentally flexible people that have that on switch type A, in those cases, I don't have much for them, because I just look at it like, boy, if I couldn't see myself in your shoes, then I have got nothing for you. Do you help to help? Do you help your with your coaching clients to get focus on how to vertically integrate not just their business but their life? I mean,
Yeah.
obviously with the bridge system, but like, do you help people to say, hey, cut this out, and identifying what that would be?
Yeah, it depends on what it is. Like, there'll be times where if someone's really in their brokenness, that I'll say, all right, what day you want to start 75 hard?
I was going to ask you if you followed Andy Frisella because I thought the answer was yes, but you just confirmed
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So I've done 75 hard 3 times the first time I did it. So I closed on that exit. So I decided what I'm going to do next. I bought the farm. I'm gonna start coaching, but my mental was still beat down. And so I didn't do 75 hard for the physicality of it. I was already in pretty good shape. I needed my mental back. I needed that drive. I needed that competitive fire, that killer instinct to come back, to be able to take on this next challenge. So that was the first time I did 75 hard. And I write about it in my book about some of the lessons that I learned through that first journey. And then the second year I did it, I brought a lot of people with me, like 50 joined in that because I was just public about doing it again. And then I did it the third year in a row. So it's now I pretty much just live the lifestyle. But no, I'm part of Arte Syndicate. So I've been mentored by Andy for a number of years and Ed Milet. So they've played a big role and influence in my life. But that times there's going to be a cutting out. If you want to add something to your plate or if you want to live a better life, what are you willing to give up? So if there's vertical integration in businesses like what you just mentioned, if they got 5 different businesses that don't correlate at all, something's not getting the attention it deserves. And usually if we follow the Pareto principle, 20% of your revenues, or I'm sorry, 80% of your revenues coming from 20% of your clients. And that's where you should pour the gasoline on. And so it's one of those things that I'm doing with my own practice right now is which things do I need to pour the gasoline on? Because as a new entrepreneur, you may start a number of different things to figure out which one's going to be the one that sticks. You may A/B test marketing like you would do. Which one's catching fire? We're going to pour gasoline on that one and let go of the one that's not only doing marginally.
Love it. Between the frameworks of the 5 bridges and the Pareto principle, and taking what oftentimes I feel like people think of their life when it's that broken stage or unmanageable, is they've got too much noise and too much things they're trying to hold at once. And it's like, how do you simplify your life? Discipline is another great word that would apply to this, so that it's not the weight of what you're carrying that's screwing you up. It's how you're carrying it. It's not the noise. It's how you're hearing it, and you need to make it into sound, into a rhythm and a tempo. Yeah, I'm totally down with that. 75 hard. You're pretty much making me put it on my calendar from this conversation. As someone that uses EOS with clients, and I've been a participant for a long time, it's a good quarterly rock for a person.
It's one of the most transformative things you'll ever do. I remember writing in my the little app journal on day 74, like you could not break me. You could chop off my legs tonight and I will crawl outside for 45 minutes and get my outdoor workout in. Like
Yeah, and
it
you live in
you
Wisconsin, so
Yeah. And I always
what's
did
other
it during
people's
the winter.
excuse?
I always did it during the winter to make it as hard as possible. Because no one wants to go out in the snow. No one wants to go out in the freezing cold. It's you're doing things that people don't want to do. Most people aren't going to do. And that gives you a mental toughness that most people don't have. So when you do the program right and you actually commit to it, you're forming a mentality and a mental toughness that 99.9% of people won't ever have.
And as someone that's started and not succeeded, which I don't think there's any shame in not doing it, but I think the furthest I've got was day 47. And for whatever reason, one of the stupid things of maybe I didn't take a picture or something, and you got to be honest and just you can't like lie to yourself. Um, because I think if you can get past day 30, you can. There's no reason you shouldn't be able to do 75.
You get into cruise control, but what I would say from the mindset to start out with, it's not I'm going to try this and see how far I'm going to get. It's I'm going to do this and nothing's going to get in my way. I don't care. So I've done it. I went 3 straight spring breaks without drinking a drop of alcohol and doing 2 workouts on spring break with my family and making sure that time was there. And that was also the start of March Madness. Like I remember going to the resort and just outside Miami the first time. And, the first thing you want to do, March Madness is on, pool, sun shining. Like I want to grab a beer and go watch some basketball, but I'm on 75 hard, so I'm not going to do that.
Right.
Like whatever comes your way, you just figure out a way to do it. I've done workouts at 3 in the morning. I've done workouts for the first one, and I've done workouts at the end past midnight. to make sure I got both of them done just based on travel schedule.
Yeah, where there's a will, there's a way. So with your podcast, I want to dive in a little bit about that. What are some of the things that you talk about in your show, and who are some of the people that you talk to? What's your audience and what's your message?
Audience is mostly entrepreneurs and leaders. And it's varied. We got a good male female mix, but the people that we're getting on is about entrepreneurship, leadership, and not just leadership in entrepreneurship, but also leadership within the country. So I've had former CIA, former Navy SEALs, special operators. I've had former chief of police in Madison here. Just different leaders to have on and give different perspectives. It's really enlightening to be able to talk to different people from different sectors and get their perspective on life and leadership. So one of my trademark quotes is "Good and great are the enemies of possible," and people will often ask what that means. So I end every show with that. I say, like, how often in life have we told ourselves, "Ah, that's good enough," or how often have we set a PR and said, "Man, that's great. I did a great job today," but you knew deep down it wasn't your actual best. And so I'm always focused on what's possible in life. Like, I want to get to my gravestone and be like 100% used up. Every if we imagine life being an orange and we're trying to squeeze out every drop, like when you make orange juice and you're making fresh squeezed orange juice, you don't leave juice left in the orange. You squeeze every bit out. And that's how I want my life to be. And I want anyone else has that mindset because we only get one shot at this thing. So anyone that has that mindset, I like to be around. I like to people that are around me that want to know what's possible for their lives in their own unique way and how they can give their gifts back to the world. And so those are the people I like interviewing. Those are like the people that I like listening. That they just know that they were meant for more. They know that life is precious and that we only get one shot at this thing. So they're trying to give it everything they got.
Amen to that. Frameworks I have around suffering is the more voluntary suffering you put yourself through, the easier the involuntary suffering is to bear. And the less voluntary suffering you put yourself through, the more that you can get broken down and stay down when life throws you curveballs, which it happens to everyone. So
Yep.
what are some of the key lessons that you personally gained when you went through your brokenness period that you didn't realize from beforehand?
Oh, a lot. But the first one that's coming to mind is the Bible says that God will never leave you nor forsake you. No matter what your pain is, what I found is it wasn't that God was above me, reaching down, trying to pull me up. He was with me every step of the way. So whether I was curled up in the fetal position crying, or whether I was sitting on my back patio with a cigar and bourbon, just in my own thoughts, kind of dead to the world mentally, he was right there. There's always a bigger plan at hand, and you just got to pick yourself up and keep moving forward. My One of the things that one of my coaches asked me to do in that time frame was journal. And at
Mm.
first I balked at him. I was like, "You just want me to write down all the shitty thoughts that I'm having right now?" I was like, "That doesn't sound like very much fun." And a caveat that I've always known the power of journaling. I just never really did it.
It's a different type of voluntary suffering.
Yeah. And so I started writing down some of those thoughts. I wrote down some of the quotes that my kids had said that, I affectionately have called that my pain journal now, so I can go back to it. But in that, I had this epiphany like the week after. I wrote down some quotes like, "Daddy, why are your eyes wet? Daddy, why aren't you in your work clothes?" Which at that point were really expensive custom made suits. "Daddy, did you get fired?" And then I wrote down two words that were the most powerful thing that and it still makes me emotional every time I bring it up. They're watching. And it turns out that it wasn't just my kids watching. Everyone was. All my former employees, community, friends, haters, they're all watching to see if I'd pick myself back up or if I'd just take the money and
Hide.
disappear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a big lesson, big thing, because I'd always taught my kids, what do we do when we fall down? We get
And
back
now you
up.
have to now you have to show them.
Yeah.
It's one thing to tell them; it's another thing to show them. And you had to show them. You did. And I think you've been doing that.
And a lot of lessons, one of the profound ones, and this is a good for everyone, especially the younger listeners. when you get to the mountaintop, you'll have a lot of people around you, and you don't know who's real and who's not. And that's really hard because you think these people are your friends. You think that there are relationships in your life that are going to last forever. When you fall down, though, it's a painful gift, but it's a gift. And especially when you get kicked down as hard as I got kicked down, you get to find out exactly who is real in your life and who's not. Because when you're at the mountaintop, you'll have people around you that, just being around you could get them something, or being around you meant that they might be in line for a promotion, or being around
Ulterior
you.
motive.
Yeah, being around you means they could get invited to something cool, like a suite at the Packer game or a suite at the Bucks game, or whatever, wherever you're at in the country. Like, you being around you may mean you get to do cool shit, go to a golf course that they've never been to, right? So they're around you for the things or what it could get them. But when you fall down, you get to realize who is there for you and who is there for the things or notoriety or whatever else.
I like the litmus test of I expect this person to show up to my funeral on that day. And if the answer is yes, then it doesn't have to be, but that's to your point of like who's going to be there when you're down. Like if the answer is no, that there's no way in hell this person would ever show up to my funeral, no matter how much time we invest in a relationship with one another, then you have to be careful with how you invest your time and attention. I think what you're talking about right there is some real shit.
Well, going back to my relationships bridge to illustrate how real it is, there's an order to relationships. So again, if you believe what I believe, then it's God first,
Yep.
yourself second, your wife, if you have one, is third, your kids, if you have them, is fourth, and then everyone else. And your job is to not screw up the order, because we can get trapped, especially as business owners, paying more attention to our employees than our own families.
Amen. One last question for you until we wrap up. We sort of touched on this as one of the main challenges that you're out to solve, which is helping high achievers obtain self-worth or self-esteem. And if you've followed along with Andy Frisella and you've heard him make mention of Ayn Rand's philosophy of objectivism, the highest form is productive achievement to get enjoyment out of life. How do you teach self-worth in high achievers, or how to obtain it and foster it?
Well, that's actually a really good question, Ross, because it's amazing. When I talked about head trash earlier, a
Yeah.
lot of it stems from lack of self-worth. So our prefrontal cortex forms at age 7. So if I asked you, Ross, what's the first time in your life you experienced lack or guilt or shame? I could almost guarantee that you'll bring up a memory from ages 7 or 8. And it's not that that didn't happen before that age. We didn't recognize it because we're just like, if you have little kids, like my little boy's 7 right now, before that age, like they're just happy-go-lucky. Like they don't, they're just playing, like whatever's in front of them is what's of interest. At age 7 or 8, our prefrontal cortex forms, and we start to recognize that lack, that guilt, that shame. And so almost all of that stems back to that. What happens though over our life is we start to build a story off of those first memories. And so an easy equation is self-worth is built through proving a case to yourself that you are who you say you are. So every time you don't do something you say you're going to do, you're eroding your self-confidence and self-worth. I don't care if it's, I said I'm going to brush my teeth twice today. If you don't do that, you're inherently sabotaging your self-confidence and your self-worth. So it's building a case and stacking wins and keeping those promises to yourself that build your self-confidence and your self-worth. Now, I'm not a trained psychologist or therapist, so
Right.
there are deeper issues that people need to deal with. But sometimes I'll run an exercise like this, and I included it in my book. I'll say, I want you to look up all the Bible verses that say who God thinks you are, not who you think you are, who God says you are. And we can get to a list of about 20 Bible verses and possibly more, that'll actually prove that. Now, I also, beyond that, now, what does that make you feel when you read what God says who you are? And a lot of times they'll say, man, I feel good. I actually thank you for reminding me. I've heard all these individually, but not stacked up like this. Actually, a little hack for you, because we have this AI age now. Go to AI, ask that question, to look up all the Bible verses on self-worth, self-efficacy.
I just wrote that to do
Yeah.
before you said that.
And it'll give you a great list. And I've cross-referenced, because at first I didn't necessarily trust ChatGPT, so I did cross-reference it to the Bible, and it was accurate. That being said, one of the things that I do on a nightly basis, I picked this habit up a year and a half ago. I read the book The Gap and the Gain by Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan, who are two great authors, by the way. And that book told me, or they said an example of write down 3 wins from each day. So I've kept a journal next to my bed since last January. So January of 2024, January 1st. And I did it every single night, at least 3 wins. Sometimes they were family, sometimes they were physical, like working out stuff. And so a lot of times it was business related. I got to 1,119 wins. I kept saying, like, I can't wait till I get to December 31st and look back on this thing and just not only count the wins, but reflect on the wins. Because what the Gap and the Gain proposes, especially in this social media world, is we're always striving for that next goal, that next thing, and we're not taking into account where we've come from.
Right.
We're always seeing our friends on vacation on social media. We're always seeing them achieving whatever else. And we're thinking, well, why not me? But you're not taking into account, like, this is where I started and this is where I'm at. And you're not thinking about the gain that you've created over all this time. So that habit stacks and proves to yourself and builds that case that you are who you say you are a winner, you are someone that keeps their promises, and that builds your self-confidence and your self-worth. So I loved it so much last year, I've continued it this year. And my goal this year is to beat the number of wins that I wrote down last year. And so it's just a great habit to encapsulate your day right before you go to bed, and you get to think about the gratitude of what happened today. Yesterday, I wrote down this. I got a surprise refund in the mail tax-wise. I don't think that's ever happened to me. I had to double check that it was accurate. Like, no matter the amount, it's like, wait, surprise money from the Wisconsin Department of Revenue showed up? Like, that's weird. So I wrote that down as a win, but it could be I got to go to my daughter's dance competition. It could be that I signed on a new client today.
Yep.
Whatever it is for you, those are all wins. So writing those down, building that case for yourself, but that's really the simplest I can put it. And then the other piece of it is gratitude. So much of our lives is not expressed in gratitude, and gratitude has scientifically been proven to rewire our brain. So if you're someone that struggles with stress, anxiety, stuff of that nature, it's physiologically impossible to feel stressed and blessed at the same time. It's impossible physiologically. So they've proven this on from one of those. If you can change your frame real quickly, if you're starting to feel anxious, to what am I grateful for, you can actually breathe different through your whole body. And so it's developing a gratitude practice in the morning, first thing, and before you go to bed, can really change your paradigm in your life and start to build a case for yourself to have that self-confidence. But self-confidence is just the base layer. Self-worth takes it to another level, and self-efficacy is the pinnacle.
Love that. Took some notes. Everyone listening, you have some to-dos. And more importantly, you have some promises to keep to yourself. And the last thing that I want to highlight in the show, Josh, for anyone listening, how can they learn more, get in touch, whether it's join your retreat, listen to your podcast, whatever it is?
Spartan Leadership Podcast, or obviously that's the easiest. It's on all platforms. The nice thing about my name that I found is that I have great SEO, because I've never met another Josh Kosnick. So all my social media platforms at Josh Kosnick, Kosnick, and joshkosnick.com for any offerings and thoughts. Would love to be of service to you. I'm not a fit for everyone. I talk through that with everyone. Like, I'm not trying to be everyone's coach, everyone's mentor, not because I wouldn't want to, but there's personality fits, right? And I know some other great coaches that I refer to as well, but would love to have a conversation. And I always ask this on my episodes as well, when I have great guests, is like, if there's something you specifically took away today, drop me a DM, drop me a message, whatever it may be. Like, what was the thing that impacted you? Because I always ask that of my audience when I have guests on. If there's something that specifically hit home for you, I'd love to hear it, because my life is about inspiration and impact. And that's what I'm trying to breathe into and live out each day.
I'll tell you one thing that hit home for me, and I think it'll hit home for people listening is when you talk about the athletic background, you talk about the ADHD and the entrepreneurial drive, it's always so inspirational to feel like you're speaking with someone that's like yourself, but that's been on the other side and made it through some of these fires and trials that has achieved success. Where a lot of listeners, maybe they don't have the long list of wins, but they do have some wins. They have things to be grateful for. So I think the takeaway that I have, and I want to share with everyone listening, is stack your wins, believe in yourself, and give yourself reason to believe in yourself. And understand that there's people out there that are like you, that have been through some crap, that are where you want to be, and take that as an inspiration.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for sharing. And I would say also on the other end of those bridges is typically a guide. So whether I'm that
Mm-hmm.
guide for you, but or you find a mentor in your life that's just a little bit further down the bridge than you that can help guide you along. Be like, hey, don't step on that plank. That one's going to fall through. Don't make that mistake. I already made that. Do it this way. Those mentors, those guides, those coaches are necessary for all of us. Sometimes you need a guide for each bridge. And that's what you're talking about there is someone that's a little bit down the road, a little bit further than you that can help pull you along.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Josh. Really appreciate you. And everyone listening, thanks for going on this brainstorm with us. In my mind, it was incredibly valuable to support the American dream, which is enhancing your life, liberty, and pursuit of property. Get after it today and be bold and courageous. Be well.